I actually can yell to the back 40. That's one of the benefits of growing up on a farm, but I don't want to. So if I get too loud, stop me. There are a couple of things that I wanted to capitalize on that Mr. Troisi said. One is parking. I know he talked about that, and you know that the first 2 weeks of camp class, especially fall quarter, especially this fall quarter where we are expecting possibly 7,000 students, parking is going to be really rough for students, but boy, it's also going to be rough for you. So make sure that you allow some extra time, especially for those first 2 or 3 weeks of the quarter. I know your time is very valuable. A lot of you have other, things that you do, other jobs outside of campus, but please try to make your schedule those first couple of weeks in such a way that allows you extra time to get to campus and find a spot, because it will be rough those first couple, for all of us. The other thing I want to talk about very briefly are children on campus. Now, you do see children on campus as their parents are waiting in line for financial aid or admissions, and they have their children with them. There's not much we can do about that. It is kind of an inconvenience and it can be disruptive, but they're allowed to do that. What I wanted to talk to you about, though, are children in the classroom. They are absolutely not allowed in the classroom. Once in a while, and this has happened to me as an instructor and probably has happened to you on occasion, a student will come to class, there's a test, the babysitter didn't show up, their spouse didn't get home in time, whatever the situation, they bring the child with them. But they absolutely cannot stay with that child in the classroom. You'll have to tell them that they will need to take the child home, but then we ask that you reward their responsible effort and allow them to make that test up or do whatever you can to provide materials for that class. They were trying to be very conscientious, but we do not have safe facilities for young children at all. We have a lot of adults, and these adults have all kinds of various backgrounds, and they have every right to be here and take classes, but you may not want your children around them. And also we have a lot of equipment. We're just not set up to be safe or child-proof in any classroom. So don't hesitate to tell the student, and do it nicely, respectfully, that they will have to leave and take their child home, and they can either then come back or you can make arrangements with them to take care of the material or test that they missed at another time. So I did want to make sure that you knew about that. The next thing I want to get into, along with this huge enrollment, we also have a lot of faculty members. I think we counted up yesterday, we have over 180 part-time instructors and over 100 full-time instructors. For me alone in arts and sciences and the business technology department, I have over 130 instructors that are under my supervision. And I think I've met every one of you. I've sat in your class. We've had our annual review. I want to be there and support everything that you do, but honestly, it's just almost impossible to be everything to everybody. That's one of the reasons that we have a session like today, so we can give you a lot of information and let you know what are the most critical things that you need to pay attention to and then be responsible for as part of the faculty here at Southern Crescent. So what I'm going to talk to you about next are the no-shows. And you will have gotten some of this information when you signed your agreement. There was a letter. Part of the information in there was provided by Dr. Ivan Allen, who's been the interim president. And he brought forth and did some research and found some very interesting information which astounded us. I knew this situation was probably something that needed attention. I don't think any of us realized how bad that was. If you look on page 5, what I'd like you to do is that pen that was in that little bag we gave you, I'd like you to make some notes. We're all good teachers and we were good students, right? So we know how to take notes. I'd like you to circle that $65,000 that's in that first sentence. That's how much was lost last year because of no-show errors. And the only people who make no-show errors are the instructors, because you're the ones who report that information directly to the offices here on campus. So that $65,000 are some people's jobs. You know, you wouldn't run a business with that kind of loss. and the college is looking at this very, very seriously. We had a meeting as deans. It was not very much fun, let me tell you, because that number really, really shouts out that there are some issues that need to be attended to. And that's why we want to very seriously talk about the no-show issue today. No-shows, and you need to get a calendar. If you don't have a campus calendar, and Ms. Williams is going to talk about that in a few minutes, there is one included. You know that about a week after classes start, you need to report no-shows. You need to look at your rosters, and any students who did not walk across the threshold in your classroom or did not log in at all to your classes are no-shows and need to be reported as no-shows. And I'll be honest with you, the bulk of the problem, and I'm not pointing fingers, but it seems to be, and that's probably the reason we needed to have more of these kinds of sessions, I think most of the issues are with our part-time instructors. And I think it's because you just didn't realize probably how important or critical this is. It's not just a paper-pushing issue where you get it in, it goes to a file. No-shows are tied in with financial aid, both HOPE and Pell. If you don't mark a student as a no-show, you didn't see them, but somehow you overlooked, you didn't mark them, they're going to get their HOPE money and their Pell money if they're eligible for that. Our students are usually pretty economically disadvantaged. A check comes in the mail, they don't ask questions, they cash it. They're often very desperate for money. They maybe are unsure of how financial aid works anyway. They get a check, they cash it. Somewhere along the line, we discover the no-show error. Somebody didn't mark it, and the student wasn't attending. We contact the student, we ask for the money back. Guess how likely we are to get those funds back? Not very likely at all. If we don't get those funds back, we owe that money to Pell or to the state, and I'm not sure about the state, but I know we owe that money. That's where that $65,000 comes in. It adds up really quickly. Every student that you falsely don't report as a no-show is probably at least $1,000, an error of $1,000. It involves the registrar, it involves financial aid, it involves you, it involves the dean. A lot of people have to come into play to sort this issue out. Also, if the student doesn't pay back the money, that puts a hold on their record, and they can never really come back to our campus until that's paid. So now we've lost a student, and we don't want that. We want to retain our students. Now you can fault them as being unethical for cashing that check, and to some extent they cashed funds that they weren't really eligible for. But through their confusion or through their desperation, they did cash it. And the fault really goes back to us for not reporting it. Here's a slogan: when in doubt, no show them out. Write it down. When in doubt, no show them out. Sometimes if you have a class that's maybe only met once, a student met you in the hall, I can't come to class tonight because my daughter's in the hospital, can I have a syllabus? You expect that they're going to come, you don't mark them, and then I'll swear 9 times out of 10 they never do show up, and they should have been marked. If they don't cross the threshold in your classroom, they're a no-show. If they don't log in, they're a no-show. Log into online. If you no-show them and then they start coming, it's much easier for us to add them back in. Now they may get upset because it's there is some paperwork, but we can add them back in and everything will be fine. So it's really critical that you keep track of that no-show. In fact, it's so critical that we have been given the directive by higher administration to start disciplinary action against full-time or part-time instructors who are making mistakes with their no-shows. This is the last thing I want to talk to you about today, is something negative like this, but it's that critical, so we're just asking you to really take it very seriously. 2 ways that you can make sure you know your no-shows is, number 1, if it's an on-campus class, go through the roster and actually call out the student's name and mark that they're in attendance. That's a good way to start to get to know them, so most of us would do that anyway. but also send around a sign-in sheet. And try to send that sign-in sheet around at a time when all the tardy students, everybody's there. Now you've got two things to look at in case you ever wondered, did that student show up or not? You've got what you checked off, and you've got them signing their name that they were there. So those are two really good backups. The other thing is our VA students. If they fail a course, Gail Daniel, who is in charge of VA, she's with the admissions office, has to contact you, the instructor, and find out, did they fail because they just didn't have the skills, which is okay with the VA, they'll pay for them to take the class again, or did they fail because they stopped attending at some point? If they stopped attending, you need to let her know exactly what day they stopped attending. So for all kinds of reasons, it's really critical every single class period that you know who is in your classroom. And when you think about it, a lot of the full-time instructors have 5 classes, 30 students, and we have almost all of them never have a no-show error because, you know, they're scared to death of having one because we preach this a lot. So we don't want to not let you know how serious it is too. If you look on page 6, this is the positive discipline, which I thought was kind of an oxymoron. But it is what it is. It is called that. And this is the process that we are obligated to, because when you see that $65,000, I don't think any of us wants to lose our job. And when you're accountable, and then we're accountable to make sure you're accountable. So we need to make sure that as deans we're vigilant about making sure that you understand this. The first one is positive contact, which we're having today. Welcome, positive. We're glad you're here. The informal coaching is the training part of this, where we're telling you how serious this is and what the procedure is and how to think of it. So already, you know, the first incidence of a no-show error is going to start to get a little deeper into away from the positive and a little more into the discipline part of it. What that means for full-time staff is obviously that their jobs are in jeopardy, and what it would mean for a part-time person is that your contract is in jeopardy. Believe me when I say, with this enrollment, we want every one of you here. You're experts in your field. What you provide is invaluable. So please help us by just being super vigilant with this no-show, so we don't ever have to get into any of the discipline stuff. We're not here for that. That's not what we want to do. But when the president tells us to do it, you know, we do have to take it very seriously. So page 5 is just an expanded amount of information about how the no-show errors work. And what's the slogan? We'll show it out. We'll always add it back. Good, good. You know the positive discipline, read over that, but then that's not ever going to be you. We're just going to say that. And most of you don't, but even 20, 15, 30 errors are $65,000 worth of errors. So with 7,000 students, if you make one error, and we realize you're human and there could be situations where there could be a mistake made, but just do everything you can to try to prevent that. The other thing is to get these forms in on time. Now, as part-timers, you only come certain days of the week. And when you get the no-show roster, or the next page on number 7, the stopped attending roster, there may not be very much time for you to turn that information around. But honestly, I would really like you to stop in your tracks and turn it around as soon as possible. Getting it in is most important.